It's not Christmas anymore. Greetings and salutations, my beautiful people, and happy 2014! Oh, and I do think that it's been a very long time since our last visit, but welcome back to another edition of
Caddy's Retrospectives!
Which is the show on my channel where I spend 3 consecutive weeks covering some of the history and facts, sharing my personal thoughts and opinions and experiences, and slightly reviewing the first 3 of any video game franchise at all on any system from any generation. If I think I can make 3 decent videos about it, that is. And speaking of the new year, one of my personal New Year's resolutions was to cover the Oddworld franchise in some form of videos or another. So now that I've done that, this early into 2014, I think I'm on my way to becoming the best man that ever fucking lived. But enough stalling because there's a lot to go through, if you couldn't tell by the length of this video. So, let's talk about one of my favourite franchises of all time, Oddworld. And the first one was Abe's Oddysee.
It's a world, and it's odd. I'm not trying to make a really funny pun there, this is literally an entire world. And it's really fucking odd. But odd in a good way. Back in this very month, exactly 19 years ago, a man known as the legendary limitless Luscious Lorne Lanning had the idea to incorporate his year's worth of experience in art and filmmaking into the new craze of video gaming. At this point, men in the video game industry were often seen as toy makers that made simple projects with the simple desire to entertain children. Yet, the legendary limitless Luscious Lorne Lanning was convinced that there was more than what most people would brush off and not take seriously. And so, teaming up with Sherry McKenna, they both established Oddworld Inhabitants, where all things odd would surely reign for years to come. After some initial business skepticism from Sherry and a little persuasion from Lanning and his gorgeous art that he had materialized, things began moving on at full fucking force. Out of this, a humble little game under the title Soulstorm was also in production. This game was highly stylized, thickly layered with universe history and lore, oozingly characterized, immensely detailed, uniquely innovative, and an artistically mind-blowing 2D puzzle platformer that was aiming for development on the gorgeous piece of arse known as the Sony PlayStation. However, a little company, now unfortunately extinct, known as GT Interactive, decided that they wanted a little piece of that arse and acquired publishing rights for this new game on September the 12th, 1996, meaning that a PC iteration could also be made afterwards. Soulstorm then got a name change to Epic before eventually garnering its classic title, Oddworld Abe's Oddysee. You see what they did there? But who or what was Abe, and what was this so-called Oddysee? Well, this game followed the exploits of our main character from a made-up species called the Mudokons, and believe it or not, his name was Abe. He worked on the largest meat processing factory on Oddworld called Rupture Farms as a floor waxer, and one fateful day he stumbled onto a pretty despicable plan concocted by his truly evil boss, For you see, all of the tasty creatures produced by Rupture Farms that Abe was so fond of were quickly becoming extinct with every serving, and so the greedy gluckons decided that their own employees slaves would be tasty enough to chop up and sell, which is kind of a flaw in the plan, really. I mean, if you eat the slaves, how is the fucking factory gonna run then? And so Abe, overcome by this intense sense of justice, flees his post and runs off to free his species, which leads him to embark on an incredible journey through the rusted meatworks, untouched murky swamplands, and sacred ancient temples in order to open bird portals, save his brethren, and fulfill his destiny. And this journey based itself around the familiar jump platforming, puzzle solving, and teeth-grinding stealth, but it also included this innovative little tool for the PlayStation allowing characters to talk to each other and directly interact to solve puzzles and avoid those higher up the food chain than you. It may have sounded like a slightly preachy, capitalism must die, environmentalist mystic kind of story, and it seemed like it was being pushed into your face. But while this message was there, it wasn't preachy because there were so many damn character and environmental layers to make it completely swoop over your head and allow you to enjoy and absorb the gaming experience that you bought, which ultimately wins you over anyway.
Fun fact. Did you know that the original concept for this game was presented as a CG movie of Abe running away from a pack of another species on Oddworld called Meaches? Even though Lanning liked this animation, due to a tight budget and cutbacks, they couldn't include these into the final game due to the sheer number of them needed. Hence why in the story they're extinct.
I'm just gonna warn you guys that this first video out of the 3 that I'm gonna be making is only gonna be a taster to the Ramble Fest on how much I love Oddworld and how much that I think it revolutionized and innovated gaming as a whole. I even ended up grabbing this awesome poster after an interview with Just Add Water, who are actually developing the Abe's Oddysee reimagining set to be out pretty soon. Even today, I can't think of one single game that is even remotely similar to this series in terms of the scale, detail, symbolism, and visual intricacies. And I suppose you could say that Heart of Darkness kind of looks like it, but if you've seen my review of it with Gerard the Completionist, you would know I don't like that game, and it's not even nearly a tenth as smart as Oddworld is. so fuck it!
Not only did this game have a simple concept wrapped and wriggled into a complex and incredibly deep universe fully realised and fleshed out by the legendary limitless luscious Lorne Lanning, but this game was also unlike any had ever seen at the time, and in my opinion it even still stands out today. And even though I loved it, I explicitly remember as a kid being fucking petrified of this game. It's pretty scary. My childhood self couldn't even pass the damn demo of this. I actually used to run and hide in the VHS store cupboard on the other side of the house whenever my dad played this demo, which at the time I called Nabe. I gotta say, I was pretty close there. Then when I finally got the full thing, I struggled with it again because I found it so damn difficult. Are you fucking serious? And sometimes I couldn't even get past the title card without shitting my pants.
It's coming. It's coming. Fucking hell!
But let's get into the semantics here and talk about what we actually have, starting with the presentation. And fuck me. Do I have to say anything about this? Really? Look at this. Look at the immaculacy. Look at the involution. Look at the elegance. The weirdness. These were all incredible works of art straight from Lanning's head and directed onto the incredible art team, and the game just has that tinge to it, you know? Those 3D rendered models integrated into the 2D sprite platforming was just the right thing to do, and something that could have only been possible with the PlayStation at the time. Well, maybe the Saturn as well, but who gives a fuck about that thing, eh? And let's not forget about the things that were even more mind-blowing, those Fmv cutscenes. You know me, I'm petrified of early PS1 Fmv cutscenes, but these, I've got to say, are the best cutscenes ever, if you ask me. Scripting, art direction, animation, humor, character, and the way it looks, it was all just completely nailed. The truest essence and best executed examples of Fmv game cinematics in the world, I think I could name.
Fun fact. Did you know that due to more restrictions in the budget and limitations of the console for this game, there was originally a cutscene of a meteor storm that hit the moon that was removed, which actually explains the origins of Abe's palm in the face of it. Without that cutscene, it's a little bit bloody confusing.
And to be honest, whenever anybody says to me, "Oh yeah, but wait a second, you can't play Ocarina of Time on the PlayStation," I then retaliate with, well, yeah, that may be true, but the N64 hasn't got that.
So basically, visual-wise, it's perfect. Not only did it look fantastic, but every single area, no matter how beautiful or twisted or supposedly safe, always had a hostility about it. It truly painted a cold and harsh dog-eat-dog world where everyone and everything fucks each other over to make money, or in some cases, even just survive. And this, I find, is perfectly encapsulated in the terrifying hidden secret trailer for beating the game 100%.
Just because life is doomed and everyone wants to eat you doesn't mean there's no hope. You need to look within if you wanna be free.
What the holy name of shit was that about?
The factory areas were as threateningly grated, rusted, and thickly fogged to make you feel 10 times smaller, and the other outdoor planes were as mysteriously concealed, mystical, and dangerous to make you feel even more insignificant. Also, attention to detail. The meat barrels. Love it. But of course, these levels of visuals wouldn't have been as impressive without the deviously great level design to back it up, which easily painted a perfect mental map of the areas you explored and dared to venture without any screen ever feeling the same, which was quite a damn accomplishment considering how fucking huge Oddworld is. Not to mention, the score was composed by Ellen Mayers, who some may even know for her work on Star Wars Battlefront 2, and she managed to create the most surreal and masterfully themed ambient noises set to droning and subtle beats that made it almost feel like the environment around you was making the music naturally. Instrumentally, it all centered around the area you were standing in at the time, called leitmotif in musical terms, and when those ambient noises needed to be pushed aside to let through some powerful and heavy beast-like percussion-driven deathly pieces, it did it seamlessly, and it all just worked. These different tonal shifts added so much more depth and design to the entirety of Oddworld to make it feel more than just a game stage and like a living, breathing world.
But speaking of design with the whole world, let's start talking about the character designs within that world. Oh my.
Firstly, the Gluckons always reminded me of the teacher things from Pink Floyd's The Wall. Coincidence? I don't know. All of the creatures looked so original and freakishly fantastic, monstrous and demented, and actually quite frightening. But what I really love is Abe himself, the most identifiable hero in gaming history. He has no armor, no weapon, a loincloth, and not even that many brains. He's just this skinny, defenseless, innocent, and lovable goof who got entangled into something far too big for him. It's ingenious. And that was another groundbreaking thing that Oddworld did, which was making you identify with your main hero, make you relate to him. Identifying with such a character made players want to carry through with him and rebel against everything that was bigger than him. His boss, his peers, his predators, everything. There was a strong message to be sung with Abe about true triumph, hope, heart, charisma, and self-belief. And when you think about it, it's fucking beautiful, actually. It does take a lot for a company to make you fall in love with something that looks like this, but guess what? You do. You connect. Bond. Instantly. Sex. And yes, all the characters carry the same other messages back and forth, like standing against consumerism and the protection of wildlife and all sorts, but the game's sense of humor and self-awareness helped mask these debatably preachy and overly pent-up messages into an enjoyable plot. I mean, ever noticed how the name Gluckons is a little too similar to Gluttons?
That's clever.
But these undertones were hidden really well within the characters and stories' tight writing, hilarious scenes, beautiful imagery, and pure charm and character, with all of the weird things that you were witnessing, and it all just works goodly. I like that word. Goodly.
Yes.
I know that I've spoken nothing about gameplay and I've only spoken about the art direction and the character design and the story and everything like that, but honestly, it's really hard to talk about the first few Oddworld games without going into so much detail about all of that stuff. Because to me, the Oddworld franchise is something you can't lump into a game category. It's something much more than that. If you look at some of the game screenshots or even some of the cutscenes, you wouldn't have even thought this was a game and more like an interactive canvas painting.
But enough with all that!
Because these games are, at the end of the day, that. Games. They are still games. So, how was the gameplay then?
Yeah, this gameplay was pretty innovative, actually. Much like everything else, it was charming, tight, creative, and a little unconventional. I won't bother explaining the platforming because you've been seeing what this shit's about throughout this entire video. You know, you jump, hang, sneak, run, throw stuff, explode, fart. And it works much smoother than Flashback and yada 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 yada, but there are some juicier things at play here.
Fun fact. Did you know that this was one of the first games ever made that featured a main menu kick? Before you start playing, if you remain idle on any sub-menus for too long, the game will automatically kick you back to the start screen. That's useful.
Multiple endings hinged on how well Abe saved his Mudokon buddies, which was really cool. And the enemy types and predator species all had distinctive personalities and traits, especially when interacting with each other and Abe himself, leading to some very chemistry-like puzzles that could get you killed very startlingly if you screwed up. And the two coolest features of this game really shined through here: possession and game speak. What was game speak? Well, what it sounds like, really. Mapped button combinations that were very easy to remember, allowing you to talk to any other character in the game and allow you to solve the main and secret puzzles, and grab you the good ending by trailing your buddies to the safety of bird portals. But how did you open the bird portals? Well, that was done by possession. Holy hot damn, this is cool. Can't really say much about this. Possess enemies, solve puzzles, shoot anything. Awesome. What a cool idea, brilliantly realised is all I could say. I mean, who hasn't wanted to possess the dickheads in a platformer and fuck all their shit up and be all up in their grill and ain't nobody got time for that? Also, that noise is really fucking cool. So with these two very important aspects, possession and game speak, this added even more depth to the puzzles, platforming, and general character to every scene and environment, meaning that you had no choice but to literally bounce off of all the puzzles, characters, and level design with your smartly placed witty tongue and cunning manipulative thinking, giving a whole new level of personal impact and slow, careful planning with how you use speech and flesh control, and also just the general platforming that were all combined together and that were never really explored before in games until then. And due to the great environments and level designs, it never left these mechanics feeling tired or repetitive, and they all had multiple uses for multiple situations that you came across. I mean, you may think that you nail every use and trick with possession and game speak to your complete advantage, but another spanner in the works is always thrown into your way and forces you to think even smarter. I've got to say, it's a little bit opposed and a pretty big step up from shooting at aliens or simply running to the end of a stage, I must say.
In this video, I seem to be taking the route of a ponce a little bit here. All I'm doing is screaming this game's praises and acting like there's nothing wrong and nothing else. But rest assured... But rest assured, where this game is a great start into a great chain of even greater games, there are a few things that did bug me a little bit.
To be honest, these were things that were addressed in the next game, but here they could make things pretty taxing. Checkpoints were not too frequent, and this isn't usually a problem if a game is fast-paced or forgiving on health, but due to the slow planning, strategizing, and yet at the same time, sometimes trial and error style of gameplay, combined with one-hit kill deaths that happen insanely quickly, when you then end up spending 30 minutes figuring out and then executing what you're doing in a life or death situation only to make one slight slip and fucking die, you start all the way back from God knows where. I mean, the puzzles are some of the best I've ever seen, truly. true mindbenders, but Jesus, a little more leniency please. And then there were the other little things like only talking to one Mudokan at a time, meaning a lot of backtracking to grab all of them on the same path, and you know, all that stuff. Like I said, it's not game ruining, but it can really halt the experience sometimes, especially for a long haul playthrough. And it's a shame that some things seemingly so small could impact everything in such a way, but sometimes it could, sadly. But hey, it could be annoying to die and restart everything a lot, but this game did give us my favorite death theme ever in a video game.
That's brilliant.
And does Oddworld Abe's Oddysee hold up today? Bit of a silly question, really. Of course it does.
Yes, it had its share of annoyances, but honest to God, for a first attempt from a studio as bizarre and experimental as Oddworld Inhabitants, especially for its time, this game really does stand out, even against most newer games, for being just so damn different. It's great. Many things were tackled, many things were tried, many things were succeeded, and many things were innovated, and that is great and everything. But the question is, was this every bit of creativity and imagination Oddworld could squeeze out into one package, or could they possibly deliver even more on another outing? Hello everybody, and thanks very much for watching part 1 of my Oddworld mini retrospective. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to hit that like button, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button either to see more content from myself, because it may be a small gesture from your part, or it might seem like a small thing, but trust me, it does help everybody out on this site a ton. When part 2 gets released, I'll eventually link that into this end slate somewhere, but until then, have a look at some of my other videos on the other slate, and I'll see you guys next time.